Hello everybody, I'm Gunita, I'm from the neighborhood, and as I just wrote on Facebook, I'm like with my brothers and sisters here. Do you mind if I sit? Is all good with the streaming? I think it's okay. Alright, we have the high-tech remote here. Cool. So I'm really pleased to be here and quite honored because there's not every time you get a chance to speak about something that you are not limited with, that you can speak whatever you want and whatever you wish for, so you can spread the message to the world or to the Kaunas about the things that are meaningful for you. And I'd say I'm not a researcher. I don't like to consider myself a researcher or somebody that fits into the academic framework. I'm rather a practitioner, let's say. I really love these old approaches that go, hands-on processes that work with the grassroots, with the roots, with the process, with the people, with the touching the real material. And I think that this academic or even sometimes the policy making and all this legislation part, it's for those who need arguments, or for those who doubt or who are in the doubt of what is really public space and what is really a participation. And from all the projects and ideas and directions that I'm working on, today I choose to speak about youth, about young people, and participatory methodology and participation in general, because I believe that in a lot of projects that you are also been a part of, that made happen in the public space, for example, in urban design or something that goes that direction. Most of the people who take part in these events are elderly or middle-aged or children. And I think there's a lack of kind of attraction or even lack of interest in what is young people thinking about the surroundings, the space that is surrounding them, about whatever design, community, and so on. And in this sense, this kind of young urban generations are the ones who really create the future, and who really create the future of the cities, and therefore also society, and therefore also the system or establishment that we are all living in, and going to live in a couple of years. So that's why this topic around the young people, about the youth, has been really kind of challenging for me as well. But in the same time really interesting and really provocative. Because with the young people you can never predict what's going to be the result. Then with other groups of users, let's say, or the people, you're quite sure that, okay, this is go this direction or other direction. But young people and young cultures are so let's say, influential in a way that they are really sensitive to every kind of sparkle, every kind of initiation. And you can direct them and you can guide them, but they always will kind of struggle against you, and they will give you questions. And questions makes your project or whatever you're doing even better. In my daily life I do a lot of curating stuff, and recently I've been so much into this kind of cross-disciplinarity, and working with two different fields, two different industries. As much as people are, like, as much they are different, as better for me, for what I'm doing. And yeah, another thing is this, like, urban sports and young cultures that I'm trying to kind of elaborate on. And okay, let's start on really talking about some topics. First of all, All right. So city mainly consists of a lot of generations. Yeah, I was kind of mentioning it. The kids, the elders, the middle age, and if we look into the public space and from the perspective of the city, you can answer yourself how much infrastructure is dedicated for the young people. Comparing with infrastructure that has been built for children, for kids, for moms, for dads, for cafe latte drinkers, and there's kind of a question mark. Where is these guys, these young people in the space? And this question I posed myself for like almost 2 years when we started to kind of go on this direction and dig deeper. And I'm not quite the person that works with statistics, but sometimes when you go to the policymakers or governments, you have to use some kind of this numerical argumentation. And we found out that in Riga there's approximately 24,000 and a half young people in this, let's say, teenage age. They have grown up kids, let's say, 15, 19 years, and then there is this opposite question: where are they, and how much city really gives back to these young people? Because comparing with other groups that are in the city, they have plenty of time, and they are probably the guys that can use the public space the most, comparing with the kids who usually been taken care by their parents and taken to some kind of activities, whatever activities, and hobbies and so on. And this teenage age is quite complicated. We all know from our experience what were our interests at that time, and we know also this kind of stereotypic or behavior that the youngsters have. And was that real? Yeah, okay. There's a question for you. If we kind of now start on thinking about what is the role of young people, and where do you see them, and how do you think about, let's say, younger generation than you mainly? Do you like young people? Do you think that society in general loves young people? That's a question for you.
Well, actually not always. There was an interesting discussion on the radio, and the presenter was raising question if all the people who rides BMX and skates, if they shouldn't have the parks outside of the city, not to be in the street and the pavements and in the middle of the street. And also they are forbidden, for example in Vilnius, there are some public spaces where they are forbidden, and also there was a big discussion with the main square if it should be forbidden or prohibited. So if they can use it or not. In the end they can use it.
This is a. Did you didn't hear in the background? Is there some other microphone as well that we could give to the audience?
There's quite a long wire, so we can.
Okay. Okay. So what she was pointing out was that not really. So that she started the sentence. Society is not really willing to understand the young people, and in this case, that they kind of exclude the young people of public space. And there's a discussion happening right now in Vilnius, right? Or it was before. At what time was it? Well, long time ago.
2 years maybe.
Okay, yeah, that's the timing that it happened. I think in all of the Baltics and Riga a bit maybe before. So society is not really like enjoying this loudness, this kind of sometimes they say untidiness. So they make a mess around them. They're so loud and they do some activities that we don't like, and they don't care about the others. But there is a lot of sociologists and anthropologists that working on this topic and that have quite a, let's say, the explanation of why society is reacting like that, and actually trying to understand what is the youth behavior as well in general. And then there is this nice public space, open space, and I wanted to put just a gap there and again ask you the question: do you think regarding the youth, is the public space also an open space for them? Or if we look at the, let's say, younger generation, because a lot of cases, I think we have even heard ourselves that you have to behave in public. You have to keep your voice down. You don't do like this in public, and there is a kind of limitations, or plenty of limitations that you are not allowed to do in a public in general. So therefore, also in a space that is kind of enclosing this virtual area, let's say. And there's many limitations and barriers for youngsters to approach the space because of the stereotypic society views. And there's also the fears and this anxious feeling from adults that don't really understand what is the young culture. They don't really understand what is the youth. So there's many articles you can find, and this case was from Australia, that the government, let's say the society, from the portal of governance, is trying to keep a kind of security, they call it so, or kind of public awareness of that the young people may be violent, may be nasty, and so on. And there are many cases when guards, for example, or policemen are approaching youngsters, not the adults, because they are just suspicious, because youngsters will do something or are up to do something, but they are really not. And there is a kind of a public allowance that you are allowed to say that this youngster may do something wrong or may harm you, or whatever you can imagine. I think you got an idea, right? So the kind of a feeling that society brings into the environment against the youth. And from all that, we come to this kind of a special requirements that municipalities or whatever city planners are implementing into the space, and that's how we get to the youth-specific places. So that is what you mentioned, in let's say in relation what you mentioned, that they tend to create the spaces that are for youth. So you do your young stuff here, you don't do anywhere else. But sociologists say that the use of these youth-specific spaces reinforces the position of youth as a problematic group. So we already consider they're problematic, so we have to put them somewhere there, behind the fence in the skate park, for example. But that's another example for the next slide. And this is what we want to really avoid. And this is just the beginning, let's say, the really long intro for why the youth and what is the youth position in the society in general. Because you know yourself that the space that shapes us also shapes the society, and somehow it's so much interrelated. So in beforehand we speak about some real actions. We have to understand this social layer that is probably invisible, but that we feel in ourselves, and we let's say notice by the global society, let's say, motions. Yeah. So if that was the social part, then how does it go to the city planning and this reinforcement of these ideas that we discussed before? And there is 3 ways that how the city reacts to these young cultures, and I will reflect particularly on urban sports and urban activities and sports in general, because in the same time physical activity is also creating a kind of a mindset, and it is so directly linked with the brain and the way how we think, feel and behave that we can't exclude that. That's why in the context of the sports. And so the city reacts on these youth cultures in three ways. The first place, they try to allocate. So they try to really build the spaces. So you do your urban sports stuff, you know, whatever you're doing there. Here, behind the fence, somewhere in outskirts. How much skate parks do you have in the city center?
One.
In Kaunas?
One.
Yes?
One.
It's already good.
And it's broken, really broken.
Okay, that's the point. Yeah, so they are not really willing for that youngsters would be there for a longer time. You know? They're not really willing to sustain this youth action in the middle of the center. So they put it outside of the center. And then in the center they try to ban whatever they can and however they can. So the many skate stoppers, and it's not just against the skaters. Somehow this young culture is equalized with the homeless cultures, because a lot of solutions you can find, technical solutions that try to prohibit homeless and skateboarders. It's such a nice group of people, that, like active users of the city, that we try to avoid. So yeah, you don't do your sports somewhere else in the city. You do it just on the allocated spot that is secure, that is safe, and that won't let you to interact with other users of the city. Then there is integrated approach, which is already a huge step forward if the city is willing to invest and put the money into the solutions like that. Three examples. The first one is from, you might recognize, where is this from? Woo! Cool. The second one, it's Leipzig, it's Landhausplatz. No, it's Innsbruck, sorry, it's close. Innsbruck, it's Landhausplatz, and the architect himself wasn't really, I would say, aware of what he's doing, but he did it perfectly, because this space is kind of combined by all the users of this public space. It's a square just in front of the Dome House or Rathaus, and it's made so fluent that there are spaces that are for skateboarders, and there are paths and roads that are made for the pedestrians, for the bikers, and so on. And they never kind of meet. They never have a conflict, you know, in between these flows. So it's so perfectly integrated with all the motions, let's say, and all the movements, that it can work as a whole. And the third one is Minneapolis, which is a project by Yannis Sario, and he's himself a really talented landscape architect who does really sensitive skate parks, I would say. He's a Finnish, and he's also been an Element skateboarder from Element team. So he really makes, for example, the path for rabbits to go through the concrete skate park, you know, because all this Finnish landscape is quite wild, and there is also animals. So he takes into consideration every tiniest detail to make this park integrated into the nature, into the ecosystem, into the city, into the people. He even has worked, I think this park as well, is designed together with the skaters themselves. He gives him the mold, and they are creating the designs. So integrated approach. And the third one, which is not always, let's say, recognized that directly. Okay, we are like a freedom of interaction city, but maybe you can mention one city, at least one city in the Europe that you would call like freedom of interaction and freedom of movement regarding the urban sports, for example, and also in other cases. It's even branded like that. Okay, I will give you just a clue. It's in Spain.
Barcelona.
True, it's Barcelona, and it has like recognized itself as we are a mecca of skateboard. And they even have launched, let's say, in a whole other program that is skateboard tourism, because people are going there just for this perfect public space that they are having that is skateable, like for everywhere you're going, you're able to skate. Even this contemporary art museum in Barcelona has been skateable all around. And 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, they made a kind of installation. It was a project together, like to combine this external and internal space, and they built the skate plaza, I would say, into the museum. So the skateboarders were able to enter the museum. Can you imagine? Like, now you can't even go with your board into the museum or in the supermarket. They are trying to kick you out. But they are a lot, let's say, in front of majority of the cities. But what the freedom of interaction really means, because I'm not sure that all of you are familiar with what urban sports is really about. And how do I mean? I mean, what those skateboarders or BMX or le parkour can really do with the space. Then I will just, I think, show you. Let you experience yourself a bit. And that's Athens, I think, yeah. And nobody has really created this space for them, like, particularly. But they are using it quite creatively. See the conflict as well. Yeah, it's imaginable things that they can do with the bikes and with every kind of vehicles that have at least two wheels. How they kind of invade the space and how they can find the use of every tiniest detail that is existing in public space that wouldn't be used in like for a regular user, and the interaction that you get in between the generations as well. And the community, sense of community that they are learning, and social skills that they are learning throughout this whole, let's say, the process, the lifestyle, an ability to challenge your skills and your body towards some kind of achievement that you are willing to achieve. And I believe that, let's say, each win in these urban sports can really give you a nice power afterwards in your, let's say, real life or whatever situation in your life to be brave and to achieve what you really want. So therefore, throughout this, again, body and mind interrelation, it creates the person, and person is a part of a society. And there's also this huge change of sports in general, the change of paradigm of what sports is, and we can see it, I think, already in the public space. And with regards to the sport, we are not anymore, or youngsters, or not really about to go to the stadium and run, I don't know, for an hour or more. And they're willing to get this kind of adrenaline, they're willing to get this experience, they're willing to have their friends next to them, and they need this social aspect. And but somehow, let's say, governments or municipalities don't really reflect to that, they don't really adjust to that. But as the society is changing, as the people are changing, also the public space should adjust to what is really needed for these young people. And then when I was preparing this documents for Riga municipality regarding the urban sports, I did just a simple comparison, let's say, needs versus existing situation. And there is about 120 sports facilities, places and spaces, stadiums, pitches, indoor, outdoor halls. And the intensity of use is probably around 20% for, let's say, more or less school stuff. And there is just 4 skate parks, whereas at the beginning when we started to, let's say, think about this topic, I think there were just 2, and you can see basically, what's the situation, and most of them were devastated or eliminated and weren't planned to reconstruct in general. But just in these recent years, and just now there is 2 more built. The promenade that we saw, and there is also this mirror garden, which is the biggest concrete skate park in the Baltics, and that's one of this integrated approach. And this was the first time when architects came together with skateboarders, let's say, or skateboard builders and professionals to reconstruct the park, where there should be also this kind of urban sports function, not just skateboard, not just inline, but lots of stuff. So you can see yourself the dimension and the scale that we are talking about, and that governments are not really willing to reflect. And their argument is that is some kind of trend, and it's gonna end soon. People will just stop on doing sports like that. They will return back to the long distance running around the stadium. But it's not just a trend; it's a lifestyle. It's kind of a way of living, and Latvians themselves, we are quite proud of the success of what athletes from urban sports has. We have the best skateboarder in the world, we have the best BMX rider and inline, and also leopard core. The Latvia's word, in the wide universe, and they have achieved what they have achieved now by using the training field, which is city and city space, because at the very period that they were training, there were no skateparks at all, or they were just some DIY things that they were using. So this is a kind of indicator that it is possibility to have such a success and such a great future by doing these sports. So the public space should really support that, facilitate that to happen even more. And these urban sports people, and particularly, let's say, in this case, there's a skateboard analyzed. Of course, they're triggered by the dynamics and the movement. That's what they really want. They don't want to sit on the spot in the skate park. They want to just take their board and go all around the city, just past the elements. That's how they move. That's how they intervene in the space. And there's a lot of interesting things we can see. That's why we were also so much interested in this skateboard. That was the beginnings, let's say. Because the way how skateboarder, for example, approaches the space, how he sees the space, how he perceives the architecture, or this whole nice words that we can mention that exist in the public space, ledge, slope, stairs. They're not just usage, just like to step and do something regular. They are these challengers for their bodies, and let's say that the scope that the skateboarder has and how he evaluates, oh, can I jump these 3 stairs or not, this slope, and how is this ledge and so on. It's a whole other world. And you can, if you look from this perspective towards a public space, you can find so much more details that architect can work with and that architect can make useful, let's say. And also by the way that how skateboarder, for example, uses the space itself. If we compare it with pedestrian movement, yeah, we dedicate so much space for pavements and for this kind of walkways, but it's not used like that much. But it's a lot of resource that we put in every sense, let's say, not just money. But in comparison, the skateboarder really invades the space. He really feels that every detail of it. And but that's what we get. That's what we want in this space. Yeah, it's just a calm and nothing with benches and nice pavements. But what we really want to success with this urban sports and bringing this vibrance of young culture is this super dynamics and livability in the city that every city really wants to achieve, but somehow forgets that there is these young people who could bring this into the space. Yeah, well, their passion is so strong that they are willing to do it themselves. They are willing to create and to take part in creation of this space that they really wish for. And that's where these terms DIY, do it yourself, or placemaking is worth to mention, because they're quite quick on just putting some concrete on the corner and using that as a ramp, and you can see those spots all around the city. At least in Riga we have I think it's just a group of people who are just making some spaces skateable, every corners and so on, and that's like kind of whole summary of why urban sports, why public space. And me and my colleagues from Other Side Studio, we kind of get triggered as well. I have done trial for some short while, and my colleagues were doing skateboard, and were also like hanging around with these guys who are training professionally. So we were really interested and challenged of what this sports can really bring to the city. We wanted to dig deeper. How can city benefit from the young cultures, not just prohibit and ban them? We wanted to find this kind of solution, and as we all have this background in architecture, some stronger, some weaker, but we wanted to dig it from the, let's say, urban planning view, from architectural view. And this is one of our projects, the first one, let's say, and it really was like provocation experiment, and just afterwards it turned into the kind of a movement, because we understand that, well, yeah, we are not the main persons of all this show. It's not our show. It was really about establishing a movement, like giving a kick for something that could grow and that could follow into some different level. We didn't know at the beginning what is the, let's say, direction that we are going. That's why it was so much about digging into and understanding what and where. And the manual urban sports and architecture in Riga was 1 month of let's say installations, lectures, and it all ended up with a debate. But I wouldn't call it debate, because then you would understand it as just a discussion about something and no result. But it was really rich and really fruitful debate in between the architects, planners, governmental representatives, and also municipality representatives, and urban sports athletes themselves at one table. And I don't know, we talked about 5 or 6 hours about what kind of steps we could make, you know, to integrate this really interesting, let's say, culture, which is young culture. And provocational part of it was that, yeah, nobody, I guess, before had built a skate park in the middle of Old Town, in the middle of cut stones and old fortresses, and we made it to confirm it with the municipality just by saying that it's installation. And so I guess they weren't aware of that this skate park installation, so it will be skateable. So we had a lot of disagreement afterwards in the process, let's say during that month. They tried to really kick us out, but we were strong and we kept, let's say, our skateable spot for 1 month. And it was imaginable how much young people came to this place, even when we put the chains after, let's say, 7, because of the noise. You can imagine it's like a drums. There is a fortress and then it's a narrow street, and there is just a plywood, let's say, skate drums. So it's really loud when they go with the wheels, and so the neighbors weren't really happy, and the people who worked there. But these young people were just enjoying that place like 24/7 in the middle of Old Town, and I have never been seeing that so much young people in the Old Town in this period of time, because most of the schools are in the Old Town, and these people are the ones who are after the school. They're coming for to skate, you know, and even chains. They just skate until the change, they put it over, and they skate afterwards, you know. And this all just showed us that there is something about it, and really we have to work on that. And we kind of felt this mission. And that, yeah, the space as well, in the context of what I have said before, is a kind of a form where we can take part without any, let's say, consequences in general. Therefore, the public space becomes a kind of a platform for democracy. Although I don't believe in democracy, let's say participation / democracy. And then if we look at the ancient Rome and the Athens, and the sports, let's say, facilities in ancient Roman history, you know, lifestyle, were so important that they were part of the central town. They were really important spots along all the other governmental, let's call it so, governance buildings. And just recently, we also got the kind of recognition from ministry, that's prime minister, how important these young people are to the country and state, you know. And we built another skate ramp just in front of the cabinet of ministers during the White Nights, I think, or was it? Yeah, White Nights, right. So the way of representation, the way how we can raise our voice, legitimization. So if we come from the manual that we started a kind of a movement in this urban culture in general, we kind of opened the doors for urban sports culture to enter this participation level. And I will just show you this short movie about National Library and how it changed when these young people came in.
Drīzāk Aina var tikt apzināti vai neapzināti. To ir izdarījis, kad viņš ir panācis šo visu to slīpumu dabīgo un granīts un dalījis tas segums un mārums tik pieejams. Es pieļauju to, ka šeit tad arī nejaušība ir vislabākais rezultāts. Šeit ir ļoti labi sanācis.
Mūsdienās tendence ir būvēt skateparkus savādāk nekā to darīja 90. gados vēl līdz šim. Mūsdienās jaunākie skateparki tiek tapts tādā veidā, kā šis parciņš Nacionālās bibliotēkas pakājai. Ar perfektām maliņām, perfektām trubām, labu segumu un viss. Tas ir tas, kas ir modernais skateparks.
Tikko noņēma šokas stāvi, sāk jau atbūt uzreiz. Tas notika faktiski jau nākošajā dienā, kā bija iespējams. Un tas tiešām mazliet viņa pasteidza, kā šī vieta izrādījās tik ļoti interesanta un bija skateri bija klāt, tas bija mazliet negaidīti.
Nav iespējams vairs, teiksim, jauniešus kaut kādā veidā sazonēt vai ielikt kaut kādās konkrētos limitos. Pilnīgi skaidrs, ka, kad jaunieši mainās un arī pilsētu videi un pilsētas kultūrai ir tā kā jāpielāgojas.
Jo galā brīva pieeja sevis izvēlētam sportam ir, manuprāt, tikpat pašsaprotams, cik veloceliņi pilsētas centrā. Tam ir jābūt.
Jo mēs arī esam daļa no sabiedrības un tā pilsēta tiek veidot arī, lai mums tur ir ko darīt.
Pieliek to jauno funkciju, to arhitekts nekad dzīvē nav domājis, ka viņš to apmalīt ieliks vai ka te braukāsies un cilvēks tā kā sportos ar viņu un izmantos to daudz citādā. Šeit cilvēki nāk un liek šo jauno funkciju klāt. Tas ir fantastiski.
Es pilsētu redzu kā milzīgs spēlaukums sev margas, man nav kur pieturēties. Pa margām mēdz vairāk šļūt klajā.
Pēdējo pāris 10 gadu tendence ir tieši tas, ka mēģināt integrēt iekšā tos jauniešus ar visu sportu sabiedrības telpā, lai sabiedrībai laust uzskatu, tas nenotiks ar kaut kādu veidu sacensībām vispār, jo tam ir jānotiek, te jākļūst par ikdienu.
Tikai tad, ja saprot viens otru tur paudzes vai dažādi interešu cilvēki redz, ko otrs dara, tikai tad var saprast viens otru.
Arhitekts nemaz neiedomājās, ka mazs bērns slīdot pa apmalīt kādā brīdī būs laimīgākais cilvēks pasaulē.
Biblioteka varētu sevi integrēt visu kaut ko, tostarp arī aktivitātes, sporta aktivitātes, kas principā sasaucās ar to, ka, lai tu uztvertu informāciju, kur bieži vien ir nodarbināta tikai viena smadzeņu puslode, kas diezgan ātri sagūst. Mēs šobrīd atrodamies tādos bioloģiskos ķermeņos, ka mums tā kapacitāte, cik mēs varam uzņemt vienā laika sprīdī, ir ierobežota. Un tāpēc vajag pārslēgties kaut kā cita darbība. Un sports, fiziska darbība, tam ļoti labi nodara. Ir iekustināts un cilvēki ir sapratuši, ka liela daļa no mums grib, lai kaut kas tāds top vēl vairāk. Un tas viss var būt ne tikai skateparks, tas var būt daudz kas vairāk, var apvienoties. Kaut ko ir daudz jaunu sportu.
Mums ir jādomā par to, kā šī te ēka un šī vieta, kā viņi spēj papildināt visu pārējo pilsētu. Kāds ir šīs ēkas potenciāls?
filmu potenciālu, ar bibliotēkas potenciālu.
May I have one question?
Yeah, maybe you also know.
Why it's so gender specific? Except for you was only one girl who was sitting and clapping and all of our just guys talking and using
No, I would like to show you another part, but then it would take so much more time. We also have a movement, which I'm part of it, is a she fix. So it's a ladies that ride fixies, do a lot of kind of urban sports. And we also, the movement itself, the NGO, we are working on young girls' empowerment, let's say, for not to be afraid, and we're trying to support them and try to, let's say, promote the urban sports. It is not something that is, so tough and that you get big muscles, and it's not bad for you, it's even better for you. And basically it's getting even more and more girls into these sports, and also getting very nice achievements. So just maybe in this part, but in general the girls are really active in the field, especially because of the She Fix movement, I would say, that is trying to promote girls to involve. Yeah, you can Google shefix.eu, and we have many other stuff around this. Okay, there was a summary thing. Okay, the fellowship, that was really important. That's always important for me personally, to do the things that can continue, and continuity of the idea and the project, and something that we have started, so that it's not dying in this self-sufficient purpose of we being architects and curators and doing something for our fun, but that it really benefits the whole, well, society is too strong word, but this culture, let's say, to be a door opener, to be a window for change, for transformation, that could do good for a public space. And when we were preparing the manifesto of urban sports in public space for Riga, and it was all like a kind of lucky coincidence that this strategy for 2030 was opened for suggestions in Riga, and we had all this event and talks and discussions and all this drive, we were in a wave just in the same time, and we made to create this manifest, which was based also on the map, which is still fulfilling. We started, the first tool was just the Google Maps that we shared, and we got about 200 spots, tags, where urban sports athletes were asked to tag their spot, and there were 2 layers. So there were existing spots that are working well, so we wanted to monitor where these movements are, every tiniest detail. The sledge behind the Rimi, okay, is skateable. And the second layer was places that could be improved, so places that could work as urban sports spots, but they need some improvements, some refurbishment. And we put this map into this as well, the strategy. And so it means all the planning, after all, in the city is also based in counting the urban sports into the planning scale. So next to the leisure playgrounds, sports activities they call, but they understand just running squares. There is also, let's say, coma and urban sports, and the gaps, which says BMX, skateboard. So that these urban sports have been recognized in the strategy, well, in the planning afterwards, in the territorial planning, and until the scale of 1 per 100. And we are going actually bigger with this map because ucityriga.lv.en, now it's in 3 languages, but it's going to continue, and that is where it leads to my next slide. Since this year, we also got the architecture award for that project and so on, but that's just a small story. We understand that this is a big deal in the Baltics in general, and that we should really work for that. We should really stand up for the urban sports in the Baltics. We have so many super cool young people that really want to do that, and there are just stupid governments, stupid municipalities who don't want to understand somehow, but we can prove them, we can show them, we can find this, we can build this platform for change. And that leads us to the Tallinn, because if you know that in Tallinn there is every second year Biennale, Architecture Biennale, and this project manual will take place during the Biennale and Design Week in September. The model of the project is quite the same as it was in the Riga. Of course, there is interaction. Of course, there is this all fundamental things that we want to bring throughout the public space. We have found the really perfect spot, again, right in the middle of the old town, which is, I think, very, very essential part of our model of how we work, to provoke this kind of old system symbolically, and to provoke this old urban structures physically. And to emphasize that there is a place for young people in this heritage structures, the urban grids. Installation, events, and continuity. In, let's say, our approach is, okay, we provoke a lot, and there's a lot of media and so on and so forth. But the real thing that we are talking about is what's going to happen after this provocation, after this buzz, after this mess that we have created, and everybody talks. And we tend to talk about, let's say, this real thing is becoming a kind of a secondary. We put in the forward this provocation and this event, but the real deal is the after location. And in Tallinn case, they have, let's say, a worse situation than in Riga, and I think than in Vilnius. Their governments and municipalities are not willing to understand what is it about. Also political issues, of course, and so on. You found Edward Wilde Square. If you know Tallinn, it's just down the mountain, let's say. And provocative and proactive, and we just came out with the idea to work this square according to this Edward Wilde writer, and we came with I would say really cool idea, really simple and cool at the same time, to rework these letters as a kind of reference to the writer, as a skatable and skatable elements that could create a brand new catalog for the cities, to cities willing to integrate the urban sports in the space. And this is like a kind of the super next level that we want to show to the, let's say, to the planners as well. that it doesn't always have to be a composition of elements that create the park, integrated or skate park, doesn't matter. But that can be element that you can just pass by. And there are many users that can use that element. There are elderly people who can sit down, and there are skateboarders who can just slide over. And yeah, we're still working on that, but I would say that it's super cool because we got the main sponsor who's gonna build all that stuff. And afterwards, these letters will be disseminated into the whole, or let's say whole Tallinn, marking the next, let's say, intervention spots. So kind of marking this urban sports map. And I showed you a couple of videos already, but the industry, let's say it's urban sports industry, is very huge, and the videos and filmmaking is really big part of it. So in Tallinn there is also a Baltic Film and Media School that is really good, and we're gonna make the workshop for students of how to film the, let's say, the urban sports movie or the video. So there are going to be tutors that were one of the best camera people and directors who work with the real skateboarders, and they're going to kind of mentor and teach students how to do it on this intervention already, on this provocation. So we got about 15 or even more videos really filming how this space, how this new created spot have been used. Of course, lectures and this kind of theoretical approach and part of the whole scene is really important. In Riga we had Ian Borden coming, and he's like the super initial origins of the theory about urban space, architecture, and this interaction. And we need these arguments for maybe not us, but the people who are coming from this municipal level, from this representatives of the planning departments and so on. And in this case, we're going to bring these lectures into this kind of lobbying level, let's say, for the governments and representatives. Photo exhibition, which was also a part of Riga's event, plays the role because of this kind of movement that photography can alive in the background of this architectural, decent architecture, more or less. You can see so much, you can get so much emotions from seeing the skateboarder doing double flip in front of the post-Soviet building, you know. The meaning of the building or this background changes immediately because of this young person challenging himself in front of this building. And that whole kind of relation fixed in photography is something super nice. And that's another huge, let's say, part of this whole movement and whole culture. Filmmaking and also photography, so urban sports photography. And invading this new, let's say, installation, we need to make it, we need to keep it alive. We need not just the punctual events, because in Tallinn they have really strong this simple session and every year, and it's broadcasted all over the world. But it's an indoor skate park, and it happens once a year. And so that is this allocate this one activity somewhere there, and we forgot that it's urban space that we could use. And so the simple session will now kind of go inside out, you know, into this public space in the heart of the Tallinn. And post location, an urban sports map, and we're going, let's say, deeper in this research part. We'll try to make the manual for urban sports, comparing Riga and Tallinn, but we are really trying to get into the Baltic scale, to have this manual for a whole Baltics, how we can integrate urban sports in every city, how we could guide the cities, governments, municipalities, planners, architects, and so on, how we could guide them, how we could help them to understand this urban culture, this young culture. And there's 2 spots that we are up for doing afterwards. That city has already agreed of let's say, discussion. And this is how it looks in a calendar. So we make some kind of installation, let's say, nobody understands, but we alive it through this urban cultures, and we try to let them to do the things. Not we are organizers and curators. You do this, you do that, but we kind of gather them, and we get the key people and the stakeholders around the table in the team, in the core team, to manage all those events, because they understand that that's their chance to start something and to change something in this city. And hopefully we'll succeed. I don't know. We'll see. Come and see. Come and join, I hope. You can follow this project in the Facebook. Urban Sports and Architecture. That's it. And but one more actually question that I want to pose. As I've spoken so much, I want you to participate.
I have a question.
Yeah. Okay.
You mentioned planning, and can you explain how are you integrating that in like zoning? I mean, how they are allowing this, or are they at all? Or how do you see that in further perspective in zoning? How you can integrate
zoning, as an approach itself?
No, I mean yes, in a zoning regulations.
Oh, okay. Well, zoning regulations is quite upper scale. You know, it's really zoning is 1 to 1,000, right? But we are more looking from this. Well, planners have a tendency to look from above to the plan. This zone, this area, you know. But the cultures like this, you can't really zone them. That's why we made this map to understand, in general, is there any zoning possible? But you understand that's not possible to zone them.
I mean, how municipalities reacting when you're saying that you're making this kind of quite huge area, and I guess you're just putting recreation as a regulation on it.
No, we put urban sports.
Yeah, but there is no urban sports in zoning regulations.
There is no zoning regulations, first place, because our planning approach is not anymore about the zoning. So there are several layers. Okay, zoning is just really wide scale. So and planners also understand that other things like businesses can't be scaled to this zoning level. So therefore, they involve these different kind of groups or NGOs that work on really particular parts of the zoning, as urban sports, or as social enterprises, or whatever, co-working spaces. You know, that really play the role invisibly, and they're not probably possible to mark. This is a zone of co-working spaces. Of course not. It gets really low down to the street scope, let's say, to understand it. I don't know if That's why we played this role of showing that this punction, this interpunction and acupuncture is really important in the planning scale. So even in strategy scale. So strategy is something that probably will never be realized, right? But we had to take care of that they don't forget about the strategy, and that there is this coma in urban sports. And we got, again, really lucky of people who are working on the documents, and also territorial planning and detailed planning that didn't forget that, and they were asking, so when we come to the scale 1 to 500, what do we do? How we can put it into the task? Because architect will, when he gets, let's say, this task, exercise, whatever, he has something written, some criteria. So I don't know. You need to have a skatable spot at least 500 meters from the residential house. Right? So this is the direction we are going, but that's under construction, let's say, this type of criteria, and that is also, like, for us challenging, because there is nothing like that existing at the moment, at least in our region.
Yeah.
There is something in US, but US is still into the parks. That's their really, really deep culture and so on. But do you remember the beginning? The title of the presentation was Youthification. Does anybody of you have an idea what is youthification?
It's quite a difficult, word.
Can you try? Well, I don't know either. That's why I put it there. Because there is no explanation of it. Well, I kind of have this sense of what it is, and I've worked with that, and I understand that. I kind of understand this movement which is behind the term, but it's more and more becoming regular in the planning, let's say, the urbanism articles. But nobody really has a good explanation of it. So I wanted to ask you guys: can you try to? We can try all together formulate of what it could be, and then we'll be inventing a new term. Oh, success, Jack.
I don't know. I think it's livening up city, but with youth people, because mostly, for example, in part of heritage, what you have are just tourists. And that's it. And that's not, this part for youth people is dead. Because it's just tourists coming and visiting, and that's it. And maybe same is in most of the residential areas, because what kind of playgrounds you have, it's for kids till 6, and that's it. And actually for youth, there is nothing. Just inside, maybe bars, and that's it.
But what do you think that youthification regards to the structures or forms or objects or design?
I think it can be both, but mostly is like urban situations, like outside, because this is where you live actually, not just the flat where you stay or the school where you stay. The place in the middle.
And from which point we can consider, like from the point of the young people, what kind of role they play in this youthification? What do you think?
Yeah, the question is if they have any role now in this, like on the city scale. What is it? You have ramps for disabled because they are old and they can't walk. You have ramps for moms who have like trolleys for kids, and you have stuff that you have like some fences for young kids near kindergarten. And what do you have for youth? No one cares about your benches.
But should somebody care about that?
The planners should care, I think. Because if you do, for example, these kind of sports in inappropriate places, you have problems. Because if you skate on the bench, you have problem. But if someone sits there, it's okay.
Some other opinions? Some are behind the spotlight. What do you think in the front row?
I think it's more about the participation. Like what kind of active member they have in the city. If you have, it's like who is active in the city life. It's not like if you're just if you're taking some role. That's the word. It's about if you are finding the spot, the role for the young people. So if they're playing more role, I think they feel like they're owning the city more. And then later on, when they're getting older, they're still feeling also more responsible for the city. So I think that it must be a continued growing up.
Yeah, because now the youth is really lacking ownership towards like the public space, and I think it's a good point about the role and whether they have the role and do they play the role, because it's not just if the municipality would bring this infrastructure to them, come on guys, now you can do whatever you want. Would it change, let's say, the kind of participation approach? You know, they would just use the infrastructure. Well, whether you're sitting on the bench or otherwise, they wouldn't really participate. You know, they wouldn't really play the role. They wouldn't really respond. But I think that youthification is about that we are getting aware, the youth is getting aware that they have the role and that they are developing the tools how to take part and how to kind of achieve or let's say get what they really need. But they are doing it in a collaboration, so they're not really like rebelling, not really trying to destroy or violence, but they're playing their role in participation, in taking part. Because right now there is, well, since now, it hasn't been really active role, right? Or they haven't been aware of this duties that they could take care.
I think it's a lot about like if you feel you have an impact of what's surrounding you, so it doesn't feel like you have to fight against that. If you put your hand on the place itself, you feel more responsible for it, so you don't want to demolish it or something.
What do you think, how it actually affects the attitudes of the other inhabitants in the city? Because you mentioned this conflict in the beginning, and those, when you show those movies, so people who are against this kind of activities in the city, they think that skateboarders and BMXs, they are ruining the physical environment, or they don't like noise, or they want things to be in order, you know, and to be controlled. So how to reconcile these different interests?
But that was the beginning, let's say, the reasoning, because the municipalities and planners, they also react under this approach. So the skateboarders, whatever youngsters, are something that we have to exclude because they're allowed. But they have never tried on, let's say, find the ways to integrate, right? Because now it's just the wrong, let's say, interaction in between the youth and other users, right? They are kind of being assumed to violate, right? To demolish everything because the materiality of the details of the refurbishment of the public design is not meant for skateboarders, for example. That's why it's been ruined, right? And devastated. By the way, the case of Latvian National Library. Well, how to explain it in short, this plaza is not meant for any urban sports. It's meant, I don't know, even for sitting. Was it meant? All those pledges, you know, from marmor or something. And yeah, well, this spring it looks quite awful because, of course, it's quite damaged. Yeah. And not just the materiality, but also the way it's been constructed and worked in. You know, it's not made for this use. Let's say, and our architect didn't predict those 20 years ago that this could be a super perfect plaza for skateboarders. But the positive thing of all of that is, first place, that they were already warned a year ago when we kind of lobbied that they allowed, and they make this movie as a promotion that the library can attract young people, that they should kind of keep them there, not to kick out. They were warned, and they should know the consequences. And yeah, so they're not really sad at the moment. Like, they're not super angry. They asked us to redesign the plaza, and this is where we met this question about how we can now we have a case. So how we can make this infrastructure integrated, right? How we can make it communicative, that it doesn't make conflicts in between these users, observers, and users that really use the space, right? Yeah, this is a super interesting project right now. And of course, well, we kind of decided that, yeah, well, all the plaza, it's quite huge. And so it's not the skate park itself, right? So we shouldn't really, although we are so into these urban movements, we should realize, we should, no worry, there is nothing more, just my email. Yeah, so we shouldn't make it just a skate park and avoid all the other users. In opposite, we were using that zoning method, and with materiality, kind of we strengthen the parts that would be used for urban sports, and renovated the parts that shouldn't be used for urban sports, and we made a solution that would exclude of using this skateboard stoppers, let's say skate stoppers. We just worked with materiality and different tiny details that we know. For example, for a skateboarder, that this sledge wouldn't be interesting because for any kind of urban sports, they need this distance to kind of make a speed, yeah, to gain the speed. And if you have a kind of relief on the surface, something worked in or out, that makes you stop. So you just cannot make the speed to make the trick, yeah. So you don't have to put something really visible. You can avoid of that, and you can keep the design smooth and nice as it was meant, but in the same time prohibit the spaces of being just not interesting, you know, inaccessible, or how was it also in text. Yeah, so I think this communication and trying to find these solutions that are not really existing right now, like a manual, right? What we are trying to now develop is this guideline. So how we can create these communicative spaces where these urban sports people play the role, where young people through the urban sports play the role. Okay, so that's the simple answer of it, or we should work on that, and architects should involve in that. And there's many of students now coming to us and asking, let's say, the kind of suggestions or to comment their works, and it's getting more and more, let's say, actual, because people are, let's say, we as a young, we're already growing up and we're taking into consideration what things we see around.
You were mainly talking about youth and urban sports. And so first question is, do you think only youth that are using the city as an urban playground?
No.
And the second question is, do you think that the youth is the only one group that's playing urban sports? And what do you think about other groups of youth, like those who are less active, playing music, or just needing a space to meet up, or like other roles of young people?
In this youth city Riga map is generated, and we'll gather the information that we are missing, because there is no information what kind of other activities youth is doing, where do they go. We have a term of third space, right? Yeah, so you have a work, you have a home, and there's something in the middle, okay? Or you have a school and home. And what is this third space for young people in Riga, for example, or in Tallinn? And we're trying to right now to monitor this information and then rework it and understand what is the thing that young people are doing, you know, or where they are going, what they are passing, what do they notice, what do they observe, and to collect all this information from the young people. So this is the super, let's say, next step that we are now going into. This manual for urban space. If we will get the money, we just applied for a big fund to create a manual for whole Baltics. We'll also include this kind of youth participation. So to combine all the information that we have and to kind of filter out and say that, okay, this is the way how young people in general can interact, can have a word, and then there is the separation of these urban sports and how you can do it via urban sports and how it is exposed in these 3 cities, main capitals at the moment. And and then the first question was about the other people who are doing sports. I think you also have had this presentation of my colleague. That's why I didn't put this project in. There's this red square or Aleksis squares in the Riga. Evelina was all were in here. No. All right.
I think no.
She was in KTU, I think. Okay. Whatever. So yeah, we are working with the other, let's say, projects, which is participatory design and participatory planning projects in Riga. And the first project was also including the different age groups that are doing the sports, and we developed together with designers really particular design objects that facilitate or that support this urban gymnastics in the city. And that was the first project that was again a first experimentation, or having the case in Riga that we can base our opinion, so that we can say to municipality, so you don't have any other choice now, it's already in Riga and it's happening, it's working, so why don't we do more, right? And yeah, there is more already, like 3 or 4 of these urban gymnastics places, but not like a training gym, but particular design that is meant for people to train themselves to be physically active. That's really interesting, let's say, objects that these designers have done, and yeah, they have got a lot of recognition as well, because you see that cities are really willing to have these ideas. They're willing to have a new infrastructure that supports the sport in general, not just in youth, but also in other groups. So there is so many chances and options that, there's demand, there is heavy demand and growing demand in the cities. It all started, I guess, with this bicycle movement and being just fit and being healthy and so on, and taking care of your health. And then, as I was saying, it has to reflect in the urban space. The space has to adjust to what people really need, just the way how do we involve people themselves? Do we take part in that process, or are we not? And if we are not taking part, then how we could develop the tools that could let us to take part, because of the points you mentioned. When you have put, let's say, being in the process, you have totally different attitude towards the result, and totally different security needs. You basically don't need any security, as an opposite.
Everybody takes responsibility apart.
Well, responsibility is again a heavy word, but they take care, they take supervision, they want maybe to, reconstruct these objects or whatever, but they will say, hey, you don't do like this, you don't really, make this place dirty, or pick it up or something. So that is the really tiny things that invisible that people are doing because they have been part of the project or whatever, painting something or following the project and process and so on.
Yeah, I think you will stay here for a little bit. So if anyone has questions, just come to Gunita.
Or write me.
Yeah, or write to her. And I'd like to thank you so much and give our festival t-shirt. Maybe you will use them in your public space to promote.
In my public space. Already occupied.
In Riga.
In Riga
Okay,
public
so thank you very much for the lecture. It was really interesting. So thanks.